Have a great day, my dear viewers. It has been long back. I posted videos. This is another video in translation, definition, and importance. It's a blooming topic in the present scenario. So I thought that I could post my lecture on this topic, translation. Already, I have posted a lecture on translation studies in comparative literature. I could say that it's an expanded version or the next part with detailed information about translation, definition, and its importance. Thank you for watching my video. Share your comment and share this video with your uh, classmates and friends too. So look at this quotation by Octavio Paz about translation. It summarizes what is translation. Octavio Paz is a Mexican writer, philosopher, and he states that when we speak, we are learning to translate. So once we started speaking itself, we are translating. So how it happens? The child who asks his mother the meaning of a word is really asking her to translate the unfamiliar term into the simple words he already knows. So when when the child starts speaking or uttering words itself, we started translating. So, translating is nothing but the way of communication, the act of communication. So, translation is the process of conveying our meanings, ideas, or intentions from a source language into the target language. And translation acts as a bridge for cross cultural communications. So why I put this slide, comparative literature, is translation is a branch of comparative literature. So comparative literature is a tree and translation is, it's an important branch of the tree, comparative literature. So comparative literature is a study in terms of comparisons and contrasts of similarities and dissimilarities of literatures and cultures and countries, more than one, and in order to contribute to the mutual appreciation of experiences of various peoples. So, for translation, literary history is very important. More than that, literary influence and the impact, both literary history, literary influence, impact translation. So, what are the key aspects of translation is the practice, it's an act of doing it. So translation plays a very great role in comparative literature. Comparative study of literatures from different languages, cultures, and socio-cultural background is not possible in the age of globalization, but translation as a facilitator helps us know about different cultures, different languages, and different socio-cultural backgrounds. So translation played an important role in understanding the different various cultures of other nations. Hence, it occupies a special place in comparative literature. As I already mentioned, comparative literature is a tree with translation as its most important branch. So here, communication is an act of translation. That is also, I already mentioned. George Steiner famously wrote that all acts of communications are translation. in an emerging technologies, and there are so many methods have opened up boundless new possibilities for this field translation. So these advancements have provided translators as well as translation scholars with a many set of digital tools. They enable forms of interpretation, reconstruction, and representing texts and other artworks. So before we move into the concepts of translation, I think that I could give you a summary of the history of translation in few words. In 2100 BC in Mesopotamia, the first known translation, that is the Epic of Gilgamesh, was, uh, was started, and it was done in that period. And in the 3rd century BC, Septuagint, the Hebrew Bible, is translated into Greek. It is a pivotal religious milestone in the history of translation. And in the 4th century, Saint Jerome, who translates the Bible into Latin, and he becomes the patron saint of translators. And in the 15th century, printing press was invented by Gutenberg that boosts access to texts and encourages translations into local languages. In 16th century, William Tyndale, who translates the Bible into English, laying the foundation for accessible religious texts. In 19th century, professional translation becomes recognized as a formal profession in trade, politics, and literature. In 1950s and 60s, machine translation, that is MI system, emerged, and which was driven by Cold War needs and rapid technological advances. In 21st century, Google Translate launched, and machine translation becomes available to the public. And in 2016 plus, machine translation, AI, and NMT make translations faster, more accurate, and culturally sensitive. And each of these milestones shape the evolution of translation. So here, I have given you the summary of the history of translation. George Steiner famously wrote that all acts of communications is a way of translation. And with this one, let us move on to the next slide. So what are the key concepts of translation? It's a basic information. Everyone should be aware of these terms when you are studying translation or translation. Source language, that is the original language, that is SL. Target language, it is TL, the language into which the text is translated. And equivalence is another term, maintaining the same meaning and the effect of the source language into the target language. Fidelity and accuracy, that is faithfulness to the original text. Formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence. When you are translating, you must be very consistent in formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence. Formal equivalence focuses on structure and form, and dynamic equivalence focuses on meaning and reader response. And what is Scopus theory? That is, translation depends on its purpose. Purpose in the sense to whom it has been translated, the audience or the reader. So a translator should keep in mind for whom and why the source language is to be translated. That is Scopus theory. the purpose of translation. And next one is cultural translation that considers cultural context. And while translation, thematology is very important. And thematology is an important branch of study in comparative literature. Theme, that is now, points to the technique, while thematic is an adjective concerned with the meaning. So the theme and meanings are gathered under the wider term called thematology. And S.S. Prower concentrates on 5 kinds of thematic investigation. So first one is literary representation of natural phenomena, that is dreams, birth, death. Next one is recurring motives. So what are the recurring motives? That is 3 wishes, 7 dwarfs, 3 witches, 3 boons, 3 sisters. So recurring motives and recurrent situations. So examples of recurrent situations, that is conflict between father and son, conflict between mother and daughter, and separation of lovers. These are all recurrent situations. And literary representations of types, that is social class, knights, farmers, peasants, Jews, rebels, criminals, kings, queens, lords, nobles. So these are all literary representation of types. And fifth one is literary representation of named personages from mythology, legend, and history. So why I am talking about thematology is an important concept you must remember when you are translating the text from source language to target language. That's why I brought it here. And literary influences is also another major fact that impacts translation. So J.T. Shaw is of the view that literary influence is a staple food finds its place in comparative literature. So when, for example, Shakespeare was a prolific borrower, totally changes and makes it into his own. And Kamban in Ramayana has borrowed the plot of his epic from Valmiki. He has imprinted his native genius. So both of them have imprinted their native genius on their source materials, and they produce the finest product, Shakespeare in English and Kamban in Tamil literature. So Shah proceeds with the term related to the influence studies in translation. And he comments that translation is an important component of influence studies. So without influence, no one can translate. So influence studies much important in translation. And translation is a creative art, brings into the contemporary native literary tradition. So the selection of work to be translated reveals the taste of the translator. And translation served as the best intermediary between foreign and native literature. The form and content of the translator work has the deep effect on native literature. And what is translation? A person would have known the universal masterpieces of Dante, Shakespeare, Borges, Kalidas, Cervantes only through translation. And according to Nida and Tabor, translation consists in reproducing in the receptor language the closest natural equivalent of the source language message, first in terms of meaning, secondly in terms of style. And translation is the process of transferring meaning from a source language, that is SL, to a target language TL. Translation is the process in which a written communication or a text in a first language is produced as a written communication or a text in the second language, interpreting the same meaning. That is very important. And I wish to give you the definition or the etymology of the word translation. In the early history of translation, the term translation is derived from the Latin phrase to bring or carry across, emphasizing the transfer of meaning from one language to another. Another influential term to refer translation is metaphrases from ancient Greek, meaning to speak across. So translation is referred as metaphrases, that is from ancient Greek, meaning to speak across, which laid the foundation for the word metaphrase. That means word to word translation. The first known translation dates back to Mesopotamian era, where works like Epic of Gilgamesh were translated into other languages. And other ancient translation practices include Buddhist monks translating Indian text into Chinese. And throughout history, many translators were anonymous, working in very dangerous conditions and risking their lives to bring knowledge to different cultures. Some of the most famous translators include first one, William Tyndale, who translated the Bible into English in the 16th century, ultimately being executed for his efforts. And the next one is Constance Garnett, who translated classic Russian literature such as the works of Tolstoy, Dostoevsky into English. And the third one, Zhuangzang, a Chinese monk who translated key Buddhist texts from Sanskrit to Chinese, which contributed to the spread of Buddhism in East Asia. So these are the earlier translators in history who made a very important uh, part in translating. And what are the importance of translation? So I have listed out here. And translation requires the understanding of language, culture, and context of both the source text and the text to be translated, that is target language. The aim is to produce a faithful, natural equivalent in another language. And next one is a layman can, even a commoner, can come closer to the major writers of different fields only through translation. Through the translation of literature from different languages, one can understand their philosophy, sociology, psychology, and socio-cultural settings. Either translation or through comparison, the problems of particular areas people will be analyzed. So with the help of translation, a text becomes able to get a wider range of readers. And as well, and also translation promotes cross-cultural communications. And next, it makes literature accessible worldwide. And translation helps in education, diplomacy, global communication. And it preserves and spreads knowledge and culture. So with this one, I conclude translation, my lecture on translation, definition, and its importance. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will meet you in the next video.